The Distance Between Us. Chapter 1. The Distance Between Waves. The wind rose as the three of them walked off the pier. It pushed against their coats and carried the first traces of salt and rain. Daniel felt Elena's footsteps behind him. Steady, sure, the way they had always been. Marcus walked on Daniel's right, shoulders set, a man bracing for words he had avoided for years. None of them spoke, yet the old tension drew them together like iron toward a buried magnet. They reached the harbor road. Fishermen paused in their work to watch the three figures move through the morning haze. Elena stopped first and looked up at the low clouds. They drifted with slow purpose, dark edges gathering weight. "Storm will break before night," she said. Daniel nodded. "You always could read the sky." A faint smile touched her mouth. "Some things stay." Marcus tugged the collar of his coat. "Some don't." She met his eyes, calm but with a flicker of old hurt. True enough. They walked again, falling into an uneasy rhythm. The town rose ahead of them with its narrow streets and leaning houses, unchanged in its stubborn quiet. Laundry lines crossed above the alleyways. Wooden shutters clattered in the rising wind. It was a place that remembered more than it forgave. Daniel stopped at the old bakery corner. "Let's get inside. Coffee might help." Marcus let out a breath that wasn't quite agreement. "Fine." Elena pushed open the cafe door. "You two look like you're meeting your past head-on." "Feels that way," Daniel murmured. Inside, the cafe held the warmth of something lived in and resilient. The scent of roasted beans settled over the room. A clock ticked slowly in the corner, patient and untroubled. They took the table by the window, an old habit none of them remarked on. The server approached, eyes widening. "Elena? Back again." She smiled, but the smile was thin. "Still standing, Leo?" "Barely." He laughed and moved off. Marcus leaned back, arms crossed. "You said you'd explain." Elena folded her hands on the table. "I will. But don't start with demands." Daniel watched her closely. Her face was sharper than he remembered, but her voice carried softness layered with something new. Fatigue, maybe, or resolve. "Then start where you can," he said. She looked out the window. "I didn't leave because of either of you." Marcus scoffed. "Good to know." She kept her gaze on the street. "I left because staying meant choosing one of you and losing both." Marcus's jaw tightened. Daniel felt the words settle like a stone placed carefully on old ground. "You could have said that," Daniel replied. "I didn't know how," she murmured. The server returned with cups. Steam rose between them, soft as memory. They wrapped their hands around the warmth, letting a small silence create space for whatever might come next. The first streaks of rain hit the street. People hurried past the window, heads down, their coats snapping behind them. The storm gathered energy in slow, steady breaths. Daniel turned back to her. "Why now?" Elena looked at the raindrops sliding down the glass. "Because I kept running from something I should have faced with you." Marcus's voice was low. "With us, Elena. Not one of us. Both." She nodded slowly. "I know." The honesty in her voice caught him off guard. It wasn't grand. It was simple, tired, and true. "Then what changed?" Daniel asked. She hesitated. Her fingers tightened on her cup. "Life," she said softly. "And the things it takes without asking." Marcus leaned forward. "What did it take from you?" She didn't answer. Outside, thunder rolled in a long, low note. Daniel said her name gently. "Elena." She looked at him, and the expression in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't guilt or regret. It was fear. Quiet, buried, and real. Before either man could speak, the cafe door swung open. Wind rushed in with a scatter of rain. A man stepped inside, shook off his coat, and moved to the counter without a glance in their direction. Elena flinched. Small. Quick. Too quick. Marcus saw it. Daniel saw it. Marcus's voice hardened. "Who is he?" "No one," she said too fast. Daniel lowered his tone. "Elena." Her breath trembled once before she steadied it. "Not here." Marcus frowned. "Then where?" She rose from the table, gathering her coat. "Outside. Somewhere we won't be overheard." Daniel exchanged a look with Marcus. Quiet, serious, familiar. Marcus nodded. They stood. Thunder cracked overhead, sharp as a pulled thread. Elena opened the door. Rain lashed in sideways, cold and relentless. She paused in the doorway, as if crossing a boundary she had crossed before and never wanted to cross again. She turned to them. Her voice was low, almost lost in the wind. What I tell you next stays between us. And you may not want to hear it. Daniel stepped toward her. We've heard enough things we didn't want to. We can take one more. Marcus pulled his coat tight. Let's go. Elena nodded once and stepped into the storm. But before the rain swallowed her, she said the one thing neither man was prepared to hear. I didn't leave by choice. Someone made that choice for me. She didn't wait for their reaction. She walked into the dark and they followed. Chapter 2: What the Storm Brings In. The rain thickened as they left the cafe. It came down hard and fast, the kind of rain that blurred edges and swallowed sound. The street shone under the storm like a sheet of dark glass. Elena walked ahead, her coat pulled tight, her steps sure but strained. Daniel and Marcus followed, not close enough to crowd her, not far enough to lose her. They moved past shuttered shops and old stone houses. The roofs rattled beneath the weight of falling water. Wind snatched at their coats, cold and sharp. The sea roared behind them, a deep rolling growl like a beast pacing the edge of town. At the foot of the lighthouse hill, Elena finally stopped. We'll talk here, she said. Her breath came out in white drifts. Marcus looked up at the old lighthouse. Its lantern glowed faintly through the rain, an eye refusing to close. You sure about this place? She nodded. It's the only place where no one listens. Daniel stepped toward her. The rain pattered on his shoulders, steady and relentless. What aren't you telling us? Elena looked at him, then at Marcus. The hesitation in her eyes wasn't fear alone. It was calculation, caution, and something like an old wound learning to breathe again. You asked who that man in the cafe was, she said. Marcus's jaw tightened. Yes. He's not important. Not by himself. Daniel frowned. Then what is he? A reminder, she whispered, of why I left. The wind rose, dragging rain sideways across their faces. Lightning flashed far out over the sea, thin and white. A stitch in a dark sky. Marcus crossed his arms. Start from the beginning. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were darker. All right, she said. But listen before you judge. They climbed the hill slowly, step after step, their breaths hard in the cold air. At the top, the lighthouse door creaked under Elena's pull. Inside, the space was dim and silent, all stone and old echoes. The smell of salt clung to the walls. Elena lit the small oil lamp on the table near the stairs. It cast a soft gold light that smoothed the edges of the room. Sit, she said. Daniel sat first. Marcus followed. Elena remained standing. When I left, she began, I told myself it was because I needed clarity, that the three of us were tangled in something none of us understood. Marcus gave a short, bitter laugh. You didn't say anything. You just vanished. I know, Elena said quietly. Daniel kept his eyes on her. So what changed? Her hands tightened around the back of a chair. You remember when I worked at the art center? Marcus nodded. You hated the director. I did, she said. And he hated me. But he wasn't the problem. Who was? Daniel asked. Elena took a breath. His replacement. A man named Rowan Hale. Marcus frowned. The visiting lecturer? Yes. I thought he left before you did. He didn't, Elena said softly. He followed me. Daniel straightened. Followed you? Elena nodded once. He said he admired my work. Said I had a kind of presence he'd been looking for. First I thought he meant professionally. Then he began showing up where I went. The bookstore. The pier. Even here. Marcus's voice sharpened. Why didn't you tell us? Because the two of you were already strained, she said. You were circling each other like rivals waiting for the other to blink. I didn't want to add anything dangerous to that. Dangerous how? Daniel asked. Elena met his eyes. He was obsessive. Smart enough to hide it. Polite enough to disguise it. But he had maps of this town. My routes. Notes about my habits. And when I confronted him, he told me that people can't appreciate their own potential until someone else recognizes it for them. Marcus swore under his breath. Daniel leaned forward. Elena, why didn't you come to us? I tried, she said. More than once. But you two were busy fighting each other. You couldn't even see me. The words landed hard. Neither man spoke. Elena lifted the lamp, casting light upward. Shadows stretched across her cheekbones, giving her face the look of someone who had endured too much in too little time. So I ran, she said. I packed my things, left everything behind and went north. I told myself it would end there. Marcus exhaled. But it didn't. No, she answered. Rowan followed me. He found my apartment, my job, my friends. Every time I tried to start over, he appeared like a ghost I couldn't shake. First I thought it was coincidence. Then he slipped a note under my door. Her voice dropped. It said, "People who leave don't realize what they break." Daniel felt a cold coil in his stomach. Jesus. The wind slammed against the lighthouse walls. The lamp flickered. Marcus looked toward the door instinctively. Elena, Marcus said. The man in the cafe, was that Rowan? No, she said. But Rowan sends people. Men who watch. Men who wait. Men who ask questions. Daniel's hands curled into fists. How long has this been happening? 2 years, she whispered. Marcus shook his head slowly, as though trying to clear water from his ears. You lived with this alone? Elena swallowed. I didn't know how to come back without dragging danger with me. Then why now? Daniel asked. Because someone followed me here. And because he won't stop unless I make him. Silence pressed in around them. The lamp hissed softly. Outside, the storm shifted direction, sending rain against the single lighthouse window in hard, quick bursts. Daniel stood and walked toward her. You should have told us sooner. I know, she said. We could have helped. I know that too. Marcus rose from his seat, the muscles in his jaw working. Elena, we're not helpless. Maybe not, she said. But Rowan is careful. He's the kind of man who works behind curtains. He knows how to make people doubt themselves. Daniel asked, what does he want? Elena hesitated. When she spoke, her voice barely carried. Me, she said. He wants me to need him. Marcus cursed again. Elena set the lamp down and leaned against the table. But I didn't come back to run from him. I came back because I need the two of you. Not to fight for me. To listen. To understand what happened. Daniel exhaled slowly. We're listening now. She nodded. Then let me tell you the rest. Elena described her life up north. The quiet apartment above a bookstore. The job restoring old manuscripts. The community she began to build, small and fragile. How every time she smiled or settled or believed she had escaped, she felt Rowan's presence return. He never touched me, she said. Not once. But he controlled everything else. My space. My time. My peace. Daniel asked. Did you go to the police? Yes. 3 times. And, Marcus said. They called it admiration. Miscommunication. Persistent interest. They said he never threatened me directly. That I had no proof. Marcus paced, shaking his head. Unbelievable. Elena continued. 6 months ago, I found a package outside my door. Inside was a book I had told Rowan I loved. He wrote on the first page. It's hard to forget someone who taught you how to see. Daniel rubbed his face. And that's when you decided to come home. Yes, she said. I thought the distance would break his grip. Marcus glanced sharply at her. But instead, he followed, she finished. Or he sent someone ahead. Either way, I'm not alone. The lamp flickered again. Daniel looked at Marcus. Marcus gave a subtle nod. Something unspoken passed between them, old and instinctive. Elena saw it. No, she said quickly. Don't turn this into a rescue. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What should we turn it into? Elena, Daniel said softly. You're in danger. I know, she replied. But the danger isn't Rowan alone. It's the way he reads people. The way he studies weakness. He'll look for angles between the 3 of us. He'll use the past against us. He'll try to twist every emotion we have. Marcus's voice dropped. Including the ones we haven't dealt with. Elena didn't deny it. And you still came back, Daniel said. I came back, she replied. Because despite everything that's happened, The only place I don't feel invisible is here. With you. The storm hammered the lighthouse with a force that made the floor tremble. Waves crashed against the rocks below, sending spray high against the walls. The sound was deep and relentless, like the sea trying to speak through stone. Daniel walked to the window and wiped away the fog with his sleeve. "What are you looking for?" Elena asked. "I thought I saw someone down the hill." Marcus moved beside him. "Where?" "There," Daniel said, pointing at the dark path leading down toward town. "Near the bend." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Could have been a shadow." "Or not," Daniel said. Elena's voice tightened. "He wouldn't come up here. He doesn't like open places." Marcus glanced at her. Then he sent someone who does. They all paused. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the air inside the lighthouse. Elena stepped closer to the window. Rain streaked the glass in thick, uneven lines, making it hard to see anything clearly. "We should leave," she said. Daniel shook his head. "No. We stay. If someone followed us, they expect us to run. Staying makes us unpredictable." Marcus looked between the two of them. "And if he wants you isolated, this is the last place you should be." Elena stared at the floor. "I didn't want this," Daniel said. "But it's here." She looked up. "So what do we do?" Marcus crossed his arms. "First, we don't split. Not again. Second, we figure out what Rowan's real goal is. Obsession doesn't travel across states without reason." Daniel nodded. "And third, we protect you." Elena's eyes softened. "Both of you." Daniel held her gaze. "We're not losing you again," Marcus added. "Or each other." A moment hung between them, heavy with memory, regret, longing, fear, and something sharper beneath it all. Then the lighthouse door creaked. A soft sound, barely audible, but enough. Elena froze. Daniel turned slowly. Marcus moved his hand toward the heavy wrench on the nearby shelf. Rain dripped from the doorframe. Wind pushed the door inward by an inch. No footsteps. No voices. Just the storm and the cold air slipping in like a whisper. Marcus stepped closer. "Anyone else hear that?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." Elena's hands were trembling again. Marcus lifted the lantern, walked toward the door, and pressed his shoulder against it. The hinges moaned. Daniel joined him. Together they pushed the door shut. But before it closed all the way, something small and pale tumbled over the threshold, wet, thin, and fluttering. "Piece of paper." Elena stared at it. "Don't touch it." Marcus bent down anyway. He lifted it carefully, smoothed it open. There were only 4 words on the page, written in Rowan Hale's hand. "You never should have returned." The storm roared. Daniel swore. Elena went still as stone. Marcus looked at them both. His voice was low and hard. "He's here." Chapter 3. The Things We Carry in Silence. The storm eased at dawn, though the sea kept its temper. Waves struck the rocks in slow, heavy pulses, as if the night had left them tired. Daniel stood on the shore with his hands in his pockets. The wind blew stiff from the west, dragging the last of the clouds across the sky. He felt the cold in his bones. It sharpened everything he had tried to dull. Behind him, steps approached on the gravel path. Marcus stopped at his side without a greeting. The 2 men watched the tide come in. The quiet stretched between them, long and unsentimental. "You couldn't sleep either," Marcus said. Daniel shook his head. "Not after last night." "The way she spoke," Marcus said. "Like someone was listening." "They might have been." Marcus exhaled. The sound was small but tired. "She's hiding something. And not something small." Daniel didn't answer. He watched the water hit the breakwall and slide back in long sheets of silver. The world looked washed, stripped of all pretense. Marcus kicked at a stone. "You think that man followed her?" "I think she thinks so." "That's worse," Marcus said. "Fear with no name." Daniel nodded. "Yes. That's always worse." They stood a while longer. The daylight grew clearer, and the cold eased its grip. Behind them, the town began to stir. Doors opening, a car starting, the bakery chimney coughing out a thin line of smoke. Finally Marcus said, "We should find her." "Yes," Daniel said. "We should." They walked uphill toward the old quarter where Elena was staying. Stone houses lined the street, each with a small iron balcony and faded shutters. Laundry flapped on clotheslines despite the damp air. Life went on even in places where people tried to outrun it. Elena's building stood at the far end, close to the abandoned lighthouse road. The windows were closed, curtains drawn. No light showed through the glass. Marcus rang the bell. They both waited. Nothing. He rang it again. Harder. Still nothing. Daniel stepped back to look up at the window. The curtain shifted slightly, barely enough to be sure. But it moved. "She's there," he whispered. Marcus lifted a brow. "Then why isn't she answering?" Daniel didn't know. But he knocked on the door this time, firm and steady. "Elena," he called. "It's us." Silence. "Elena, open up," Marcus added, softer than expected. Finally, locks turned 1 to a third, and the door opened a few inches. Elena's face appeared in the shadow. Her hair was damp, as if she had washed it in a hurry. Her eyes held the trace of a sleepless night. "Come in," she said. Quickly. They entered. She shut the door and locked all 3 bolts again. The room was dim, the curtains drawn tight. A pot of coffee sat untouched on the table. Paper half crumpled lay near the sink. Her suitcase was open on the floor. Clothes folded in nervous, uneven stacks. "You look like you haven't slept," Daniel said. "I haven't," she replied. Marcus stepped closer. "Elena, what's going on?" She sat down at the table and pressed her palms together. She looked at both men long and steady, as though choosing how much of herself she could risk. "I didn't come back to make peace," she said. "And I didn't come back to break it." Daniel pulled out a chair. "Then why?" She swallowed. "Because someone I worked with disappeared. And then someone else did. And before I left the city, someone followed me home." Marcus's shoulders tightened. "Followed?" "Yes." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because I asked questions I wasn't supposed to ask." Daniel leaned forward. "About what?" Elena's voice thinned into a whisper. "About a man who knew too much." Marcus frowned. "You worked at a museum." "On paper," she said. "But museums have archives. Archives hold old letters, old maps, old names. And some people don't like old names being read." Daniel felt a cold shift in his chest. "Elena, what did you find?" She shook her head. "Not here. Not in this room. The walls are thin." Marcus looked at the locked door. "If someone's after you." "They are," she said. "And last night at the cafe, the man who came in, he wasn't there for coffee." Daniel's pulse tightened. "He saw you. He followed me when I left. I shook him off near the harbor. He didn't see me come back here." Marcus cursed under his breath. "Why didn't you tell us last night?" "Because I didn't want to drag you into this." Daniel met her eyes. "It's too late for that." She paced the room restless, her steps unsteady. The 2 men watched her silently until she stopped and faced them again. "I'm going to the lighthouse," she said. "There's something I need to check." Marcus blinked. "The lighthouse? It's been closed for years." "I know," she said softly. "But someone left something there for me a long time ago. I never went to get it." Daniel felt the familiar weight of the past settling on the moment. The 3 of them had once climbed that lighthouse at sunset, back when things broke less easily, before choices turned into damages. "What is it?" he asked. "A letter," she replied. "And a key." Marcus frowned. "To what?" "I don't know. But the letter said to take the key only when I was ready to understand why everything happened the way it did." Daniel exchanged a glance with Marcus. The air in the room felt taut. "Elena," Daniel said, "you don't have to go alone." "I wasn't planning to." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we leave now." She hesitated. "We need to be careful. The man from last night might still be in town." Daniel reached for his coat. "Let him follow us. At least then we'll see him." Elena stepped toward him and lowered her voice to a whisper. "No, Daniel. If he follows, he won't want to be seen." Marcus pressed his lips together. "All the more reason not to split up." Elena nodded, grabbed her coat, and pocketed a folded slip of paper. She turned off the lights. The 3 of them stepped outside into the clear morning. The street was quiet. Too quiet. Elena locked the door and looked toward the harbor. A single car idled near the bend, engine humming. Daniel laid a hand on Marcus's arm. He didn't need to speak. Marcus had already seen it. Elena lowered her gaze. We take the upper path. Less exposed. And they walked. The upper path cut through the old cliffs and wound toward the lighthouse road. The air smelled of wet stone and pine. The storm had left puddles in the dips of the trail. The three of them moved quietly, their steps steady and quick. Daniel walked slightly ahead, scanning the slope above. Marcus stayed behind Elena, eyes shifting from shadow to shadow. You think he's following? Marcus asked quietly. I think he wants me to think he isn't, Elena replied. They crossed a narrow wooden bridge. The sea beneath it churned in slow circles, the remnants of the storm caught in the rocks. Daniel looked back. Elena, tell us more about this letter. She hesitated. I got it years ago, right before I left. You never said anything, Marcus said. There were many things I didn't say. Daniel slowed. Who sent it? I don't know, she said softly. It wasn't signed. Then why trust it? Elena looked at him. Because it knew something only one person could have known. Something I never told either of you. Marcus stiffened. What was it? She shook her head. It doesn't matter now. It matters, Marcus pressed. Elena stopped walking. The wind pushed her hair back from her face. She looked at the two men as though weighing both memory and consequence. It said, she whispered, that the night before I left, someone had come to my window. Someone who told me not to choose. Someone who knew I couldn't choose. Daniel felt the breath leave his chest. Elena. Marcus took a step forward. Who came to your window? She turned away. I don't know. I never saw the face. Just the voice. And the warning. You believed a stranger? Marcus asked. No, she said quietly. I believed the fear. They resumed walking. The cliffs rose higher around them. Far below, the sea rolled and broke and rolled again. Daniel finally spoke. We deserved to know. Elena glanced back at him. I know. But I wasn't brave then. They climbed the last hill. The lighthouse came into view. A tall, weathered tower with its lantern shutters rusted shut. The surrounding fence sagged in places. Birds circled above it in uneven loops. Marcus stared. It looks worse than before. It is, Elena said. As they approached what remained of the gate, something shifted in the wind. A faint rustle. A footstep on gravel. Daniel lifted his hand in warning. Marcus stilled. Elena held her breath. A figure stepped from behind the wall, but it wasn't the man from the cafe. It was an old keeper, gray beard, tired eyes, clothes layered against the cold. He carried a lantern in one hand. You shouldn't be here, the man said. Elena stepped forward. The lighthouse is abandoned. It's not abandoned if someone still keeps watch, the man replied. Marcus squared his shoulders. We're not here to cause trouble. The keeper looked at each of them, slow and deliberate. People who say that often carry trouble with them. Daniel asked, do you live here? Live, the man said. Watch. Listen. I do what the place needs. Elena swallowed. I came for something left here a long time ago. The keeper studied her. His gaze softened a fraction. Sometimes things are left for reasons, and sometimes they should stay where they are. She met his eyes. I don't have a choice. He sighed. No one ever does. Not really. The keeper stepped aside and pushed the gate open. You have an hour, he said. After that, the tide climbs. And the tide doesn't wait for questions. They entered the grounds. The keeper watched them go, lantern flickering against the stone. Inside the lighthouse, dust filled the air like thin smoke. The steps spiraled upward, worn smooth from years of weather and feet that no longer came. The space echoed faintly with each sound, breath, footstep, heartbeat. Elena walked to the far corner at the base of the stairs. She knelt, reached behind a loose stone, and pulled out a small tin box, dented, old but still sealed. Daniel felt something shift in the air. Marcus crossed his arms, waiting. Elena opened the tin. Inside was a folded letter and a copper key with a broken loop. She lifted the letter with both hands, as though it might burn her. Marcus asked, do you want us to? No, she said. I need to read it. She unfolded the paper. Her eyes moved across the words. Her breath caught. What does it say? Daniel asked. She read aloud. If you are reading this, someone has already come looking for what you found. Do not return to the city. Do not trust anyone who arrives asking gentle questions. The man who spoke to you at the window wasn't warning you about the boys. He was warning you about me. Marcus stiffened. What? Elena kept reading. I left a key. It opens a locker in the old rail depot. Inside is everything you were never meant to find. If I vanish, you'll know why. If you vanish, the truth vanishes with you. Run if you can. If you can't, choose carefully who stands beside you. The letter ended there. No name. Daniel felt the air thicken. Elena, who wrote that? Her voice trembled. I think it was someone working in the archive. Someone who knew I would dig deeper. Marcus stepped forward. And the man in the cafe? Looking for the key, Elena whispered. Daniel exhaled slowly. And now he knows you came home. She nodded. Yes. Marcus clenched his fists. Then we need to get you out of town. Now. No, she said. I need to get to the depot first. Daniel frowned. Elena. If I run without knowing why I'm running, she said, I'll be running forever. A sharp sound cut through the lighthouse, wood cracking under weight. The three of them froze. Daniel whispered. Someone's outside. Marcus moved to the window slit. He looked out, jaw tightening. It's him, Marcus said. The man from the cafe. Elena's breath hitched. How did he find us? Daniel didn't answer. They heard steps outside on the gravel. Slow. Controlled. The keeper's voice spoke once, low, tense. Then another voice answered, colder. The keeper shouted. A scuffle. Then silence. Daniel grabbed Elena's hand. We're not staying. Marcus nodded. Back exit. Now. They moved quickly to the rear door. Daniel pulled it open. And froze. The keeper lay on the ground, lantern smashed beside him. He wasn't moving. Elena gasped. God. Marcus checked the man's pulse. Alive, he whispered. Barely. Daniel looked down the hill. No one there. No footsteps. No shadows. The man had vanished. Elena, Daniel said, voice tight. We leave. Now. She held the key in her fist, knuckles white. Yes. Marcus lifted the keeper and dragged him inside the lighthouse. Someone will find him. They slipped down the back path, moving fast, careful, silent. The sea roared far below. The tide rising. Halfway down the cliff road, Elena stopped. Daniel turned. What is it? She looked at both men. Fear and resolve warred in her eyes. If I go to the depot, she said, and open that locker, you two don't walk away untouched. Marcus stepped closer. We already aren't. Daniel nodded. You're not doing this alone. Elena swallowed. Then we do it together. But once we open that locker, nothing will be the same. Marcus exhaled. It hasn't been the same since the moment you came back. Daniel held her gaze. We go forward. All three of us. Elena's eyes glistened. The wind lifted her hair. The sea crashed far below. She whispered. Then let's finish what someone else started. They continued down the path, three figures bound by the past, the present, and whatever waited in the old rail depot. And behind them, somewhere unseen, footsteps followed. Chapter 4: The Tides of Truth. The morning came slow, gray and wet. Rain had soaked the streets overnight, and the town smelled of damp stone and salt. Daniel lit a cigarette at the edge of the pier, the smoke curling into the low clouds. Marcus joined him, hands shoved into coat pockets. Neither spoke for a long time. The silence carried everything they hadn't said yesterday, everything Elena had left unspoken in her wake. You think she'll come back here? Marcus finally asked. Daniel inhaled. The smoke burned his throat. I don't know. Maybe she never left. Marcus frowned. That's easy for you to say. You're the one who stayed. Daniel let it hang. He didn't answer. Inside the cafe, Elena waited, staring out at the water. Her hair was damp from the drizzle that clung to the streets. She traced the rim of her coffee cup, thinking of the man she hadn't seen in years, the man whose presence had changed everything, who had returned just when she thought she could breathe again. When Daniel and Marcus entered, she didn't look up at first. Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke. You're both here. Of course, Daniel said. Where else would we be? Marcus leaned against the table. You want to tell us now? Or are we going to sit here like ghosts? Elena smiled faintly. Not ghosts. Survivors. The tension folded around them. A storm they all knew was coming. Elena spoke first, but her words were careful, measured. I didn't leave because of you. I left because of what I couldn't face inside myself. Marcus shook his head. Inside yourself? That's convenient. It's the truth, she said softly. I thought leaving would make it easier for all of us. But it didn't. Daniel leaned forward. Then tell us. Tell us what really happened. Elena's hands trembled slightly. She took a deep breath. There was someone else. Not in the way you think. Someone who made me see that staying meant losing myself. I ran to save what was left of me, not because I stopped caring for either of you. Marcus laughed, short and bitter. Save yourself. That's what people always say. Elena's eyes met his.